Hey, what's up? How are you guys? I want to talk about the record that I self-released back in 2007. That was my very first vinyl record I ever did, and it was 100% self-released without any label. Just to give you a bit of context, the record was pressed in 2007 and at the late 2007, but the tracks on the record were made somewhere around 2002, 2005. I initially wanted my music to be released on other labels. I was really focused on putting my music out on Planet Moo. I've been sending Mike a lot of demos all the time. He's really aware of my music. Well, he was definitely, because that was like, nearly 20 years ago. I've met some artists from Planet Moo Records that I've had gigs with. They really liked my music and they were helping Mike go through his demos. So we often had like these back and forth email exchanges. Well, back then it was still MySpace, I think, that we were using. So they were always like telling me that, oh, I found your demo CD at Mike's place, and I was really persuading him to put out your music, but he really didn't want to do it. And the reason was because the stuff I was sending him was very much sounding like a mixture of Squarepusher and Aphex Twin, which is true. I can't deny it. I mean, I was really influenced a lot by these two artists at the time. When I was growing up, I was really into music, any kind of music, anything that was on the TV at the time, I was a fan of. So those who are old enough, they might remember artists like Dr. Alban, Hathaway, Tune Limited, those kind of stuff that was always playing on the MTV and on the radio. And somewhere around mid-90s, 94, 95, I was, I think, 12 years old or something like that. I've discovered a local radio show on a local radio station that was playing a lot of electronic music, especially drum and bass. And when I first heard drum and bass, I was like blew away. That moment changed my life forever, and I instantly became a fan of electronic music, especially drum and bass and jungle. And I stopped listening to all those mainstream pop music, and that's a drum and bass it was for me. And I started DJing somewhere around when I was 15. A friend of mine had like this early CD DJ decks, but they were not like pioneers. They were Omnitronic, and they were like very different thing back then. So I've learned on those. Also, other friends like had turntables and vinyls and records. So I played and learned how to play records as well. And when I turned 18, I started DJing in local events, local bars and stuff that we had, and I was always playing drum and bass. And as a DJ, my idea was always to play the kind of music nobody else has heard before. So the best way to do so was making my own stuff for my DJ sets, which is what I did. I was just producing a lot of my own music to play in my DJ sets, so that way definitely nobody would have heard the stuff I was playing. Fast forward to 2001, we were hanging out with my mates, smoking joints, getting all high, and one of the mates had access to websites like Napster or SoulSeek, I don't remember what was that, because back in the day it wasn't really easy to get the music, so we were just downloading it a lot from Kazaa, from SoulSeek. So anyway, he was just we were just listening to a lot of new releases, and one of those came out was Aphex Twin Drug Use. So I remember we were just sitting, being high and stuff, and we've played the first track from the Drug Use that was called 54 Cyber Beats. And that track blew my mind. I mean, that moment I was like, what the fuck? This was like, still a drum and bass to me, but it was so different, so out of this world. I became an instant fan of Aphex Twin. And I knew Aphex Twin before, but I never really paid too much attention to his music because I was all, drum and bass and everything else is shit. So after listening to 54 Samba beats, I've changed my mind about Aphex Twin. I've kind of started listening all of his stuff, and I became an instant fan of him. A few months later, Square Pusha released his album Go Plastic, and I remember as well, like just getting my hands on it and listening to it for the first time. I was like, what the fuck? This is like this sounds like drum and bass, like jungle. It still has the same drum breaks, but it's fast. It's more electronic. It's so out of this world. So these two albums, Square Pusha's Go Plastic and Aphex Twin Drug Use, became like staples for me. Since that moment, I completely forgot about drum and bass. Drum and bass sounded like just mainstream music for me, and I really wanted to sort of like dive into more of this experimental stuff. But I was also DJing at the time a lot as well, and I wanted to play that kind of stuff in my sets, but I didn't want to make my sets just completely with Square Pusha stuff or Aphex Twin stuff. Besides, there's only like these two albums that I really liked, and you couldn't even mix them because Square Pusha was more like 200 BPM stuff and Aphex Twin was like 168, so you couldn't even like mix them together. So I decided I was gonna make my own stuff for my DJ sets. Which eventually led me to playing live sets and evolving my sounds towards that kind of sound as well. So yeah, I agree with that fact that Mike Pardina said that my music sounded like a marriage between Aphex Twin and Square Pusha. I can't deny it. I was really influenced by these two artists, by these two sounds, but nonetheless, I was still trying to incorporate my own sort of attitudes to that kind of sound. And besides, those tracks on the record, they were made like 20 years ago. That's half my life ago. I still get people asking me to do that kind of stuff again, but I'm in a very different situation in my life. I have different understanding about everything, and I don't have that energy in me anymore to produce this sort of electronic punk, fuck you in the face kind of tracks. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't just the kind of stuff I was doing at the time. I was doing all kinds of stuff, and I would make really slow, jazzy, mellow kind of stuff, easy, chill stuff, and also I would be making those experimental drill and bass kind of stuff. And when you're 20, you have plenty of time on your hands. You don't have any responsibilities. You don't have family to take care of and stuff, and you look at life from a very different perspective. There's definitely when you're 20 and you're young, you really think that you've got all the time on your hands, so you use it differently. And I was literally making music all the time, and I could spend 20 hours on a track easily. Whereas now, if I spend 4 hours on a track, I'm like, oh, that's a really long time for me. But anyway, back to the records. I've always wanted to have my music pressed on vinyl, even though at the time I was still living in Klaipėda in Lithuania, in my home country, my hometown, and I didn't have any records on me. I wasn't even buying records back then, but I really wanted my music to be pressed on vinyl because I really thought that if you don't have your music out on a vinyl, then you don't have your music out at all. I did have digital releases, but it's a different thing. And I've been sending out my demos to other labels, and mostly that they could release it was digitally. And it was really back then it was considered experimental stuff, and it still is probably too experimental stuff. So I would dream about getting my music pressed on vinyl every day, daily, every day. It was all on my head. All I had on my head was just, I want my music to be out on vinyl. And fast forward to 2006. A lot of my mates, it just so happened that a lot of my mates were moving to London, and I moved to London as well. It just that decision to change everything was very instant, and I didn't even think about it too much. I was like, I'm moving to London, and 1 month later I moved. And the funny thing is that everybody I knew moved out to London as well. So I was hanging out with lots of friends here in Lithuania, and then in 2 months' time, we all were hanging out in London, so that was fun times as well. And I got a job there's this secondhand chain in London called Music and Video Exchange. So I got a job in that place. I worked in record shops, but also sometimes worked in other shops, like clothing shop, bookshops and stuff. It was really boring job. So those days when I worked in record shops were like the best ones for me. I managed to save up some money, and one day I was like, I'm gonna press a record. That was really spontaneous thing to do. I found a company in Surrey, if you pronounce it correctly, and I pressed 300 copies. I think I paid for it like 850 quid at the time, and it took maybe 2 to 3 months for those records to arrive. Mind you, it was 2007. Things were life was a bit different at the time. But I was so broke that I decided to make everything as cheap as possible. I could have done better labels and definitely should have done proper artwork, but my decision to press a record was so spontaneous that I literally sent my tracks over and that's it. And I didn't think about anything else. So I pressed 300 copies. And I kid you not, it took me about 15 years to sell all of those 300 copies. The music on those records were really too experimental. And me being me, no business background, nothing, I had no idea what to do with those records. So I gave some stuff away. I was selling my records on MySpace. And I tried to sell some records through record shops. And eventually Bandcamp came over like many years later, and so it took me 15 years to sell all those 300 copies. The record is now available on Bandcamp free. There's also, I put it on my YouTube for streaming. The tracks are not digital versions, but actually ripped from the vinyl itself. And the record is now, the files are on my Bandcamp are free download, pay what you want. I don't care, I just want my music to reach as many people as possible, and I don't mind giving them away for free. It's just how it is. When I started making music, I was always making music for myself. Like I was the only one that I was making music for, and I never really thought about making a living with it. Although I really, really, really want to make a living from music, because that way I could continue doing that. But it's not easy in this world to make a living from music. So we have to do all kinds of side things, or not side things. The music becomes like a side hustle or a side thing. And to everyone it's different. To me, it's just like that. I just make music for myself, and I don't make a living from my music, sadly. Or maybe not sadly, I don't know. That way, if it's not my main sort of living, I don't have to compromise my music, and I'm free to do whatever I want. And I do believe music needs to be exactly like that, because this is the only way you can actually make some sort of stuff that's interesting and that's different. Because right now a lot of people are into that for money and for fame and for other things, and a lot of music that's out right now, it all sounds the same and it's boring, and I don't want to be part of that. So yeah, that's a lot of me talking in this video. I hope you watched it all through. I've done a couple of new tracks with my hardware setup and stuff, so hopefully I'll have time to maybe shoot more videos. I know it's been a while. I've been very slow with new videos recently. It's just that so much stuff to do, and I never have time to make new music as Ija, and let alone like making videos. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon again. Have a good day.